This is Rock with J-Man. It's with Gene Hoglan. So how you doing, man?
Hoglan,
Hold on. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. How are you doing? I'm sorry to hear about your knee. I hope you're doing okay.
Yeah, I'm all doing good. Yeah.
Excellent.
So, how's life treating you?
Currently, like a baby treats a diaper, but things are getting better. We just played Death to All, just did 2 nights at the Milwaukee Metal Fest, and those were gargantuan nights for Death to All. It was a great couple of shows, and now we are starting the Scream of Perseverance tour, and that's going to entail about 34 shows in just about as many cities. We're doing a very novel run of all of this death material. We're focusing on 2 records in their entirety, one being Scream Bloody Gore, the second being The Sound of Perseverance. And on night 1, we're going to be doing Scream Bloody Gore and all of its surrounding albums, which are kind of from the more brutal era of death. And then the on the second night, we're going to be doing The Sound of Perseverance and its more technical, melodic surrounding records. Because Death definitely had 2 to 3 different kind of genres that they drifted through and helped create. So we're trying to pay tribute to all of that.
So, Death to All is an all-star tribute band to Death. Is that right?
Yes.
And can I ask why you guys decided to make it a tribute band instead of calling yourself Death? A lot of bands continue after a member passes.
Well, we felt like that would be egregiously undisrespectful to our vocalist and leader Chuck Schuldiner, who passed away in 2001, and this just kind of started off as a tribute. And we're just kind of like we're not. We do hear from people saying, "Hey, this is not a tribute band. This is Death." But without Chuck, it would be challenging, and I'm not sure how, I'm not sure what the protocols would be to call it Death. So you're getting Death music played by Death musicians, and we are about the only band that does it this way. So, we just try to come correct, that's all it is. So, and by calling it Death to All, everybody knows that it's Death's music being played by ex-Death members. So, um, that's just the way the road has taken us down to continue to do what we're doing.
So, this is like a metal version of Dio Disciples, then?
What's that?
So, this is like a metal version of Dio Disciples, then?
Yeah, and we've been going for longer than they have, I suppose. It's just we like playing this music, and we just figured back in 2012, when we started putting all this idea together. 2011 really is when the concept started coming around. We just thought, well, even though we don't have Chuck anymore, he's got so many fans, and there are so many fans of Death, and Death is pretty much an untouchable band in the metal scene. You cannot fault Death, really. So we just thought, what better way to keep Chuck's music alive, keep his musical legacy alive, keep his memory alive, than be able to play his music. He's no longer with us, but we thought, let's not let his music fade away in the live portion of things. So that's why we do what we do.
Now, I know you were a part of Death for a short time. Does this project bring up memories?
Um, of course, all the bands that I've ever been involved in, I have probably a larger resume than the average metal musician. And every band that I'm in brings up a whole ton of memories. And I have a lot of great memories, and I've got a lot of great relationships that were created by my involvement in Death. Like, for instance, my relationship with Steve DiGiorgio, my bassist. he's the best bassist in metal, in my opinion. And, you know, he's my brother. He's one of my best friends. So getting to play with my best pals, Bobby Coble, one of my other best pals. He's an amazing human being. And so it's just great to play. And I remember fondly all of our times together in Death. So yeah, it definitely brings up a whole bunch of memories, as does all my projects do.
And the tour just kicked off. So how did the first two nights go?
Those were amazing. Those were 2 nights at the Milwaukee Metal Fest, and I just spoke with Jamie Jasta last night at the very end of the night, and he said that we quite possibly had the largest turnout of any band of our day. So that's pretty good. And you know, I mean, it's us playing death music. It's going to be jam packed at this tour. You know, a lot of these dates on this tour are selling out. So I'd highly suggest for people to grab tickets for the shows that haven't sold out yet. So keep those coming. And yeah, it started off great. You know, 2 nights at a metal festival, at one of the few metal festivals that, you know, one of the underground hardcore metal festivals that exist in the United States. What a great way to start off a tour. Absolute success. So we're looking forward to the next 6 weeks, and we're going to bring it, definitely.
Why didn't you get the voice Pickles and Death Clap?
What's that?
Why didn't you get the voice Pickles and Death Clap?
Because I came along after the show had started, and Brendan Small definitely has his he's got his characters developed. Sorry to see you yawning, brother. Sorry to bore you. I'm trying to keep this entertaining for you. But yeah, you know, just with Brendan Small, he's got, you know, the show is the show, and I do the drumming of Pickles. I do the voice, the drumming voice of Pickles. So, you know, that's where that goes. So yeah, man, I've done a voice or two on the show, and that's always fun. But you know, I'm definitely there to bring Pickles drumming to life. Absolutely.
Were you surprised when Brandon thought brought the show back last year for a movie and a tour?
Well, Brendan, no, not at all, because, you know, I've been involved with the whole project all this time, in all the backs, you know, behind the scenes sort of thing. Brendan always keeps me posted on what is about to happen. And when we, you know, a few months before we did the Adult Swim Festival in Los Angeles at the Bank of California Stadium, you know, he had mentioned that it looked like Adult Swim was attempting to help move the project back into the spotlight again, you know, because there were some situations that were beyond Brendan's control that just created the project's demise, really. And so when Adult Swim reached out to him, kind of with an olive branch, you know, he asked me if I'd be interested in carrying on. I was like, absolutely. I love Death Clock. So yeah, that's you've got my interest, absolutely. And so by doing that one show for Adult Swim, that kind of left the door open for the new movie, the new album, everything that can, you know, the new tour. You know, we've done 2 tours so far since we've come back in 2023. And late last year, we did the Baby Clock tour with us, you know, Death Clock and Baby Metal. That was a resounding success. That was amazing. And then we just finished the Mutilation on a Spring Night. We just finished that, I don't know, like 12 days ago or something like that. I'm already on the road again. So who knows? Maybe in the future we'll get to do some even more Death Clock stuff. So there you go.
Do you think this project will continue though?
Death Clock?
Do you think
Death Clock? It you know what? I can never say never. So I would suggest that, you know, nothing lasts forever. So if you you know, if you're really interested in seeing Death Clock, see them while you can, because I don't know the absolute future. I know there is a future, but an infinite future, I can't say that there would be.
What made you decide to leave Testament?
It was a scheduling thing. Their manager had reached out. I had made it so, you know, when the pandemic hit and we weren't sure what the future of our industry was going to be, we all had to take 2020 off. However, in 2020, I started booking things for 2021, and I would book myself a block of things, and then I would leave a giant block open for Testament, and then I would book myself a block of things. I would leave an even bigger, block of things open for Testament to be able to drop their schedule in, and things still couldn't work out. So when their management called me and said, we need a commitment sort of thing, and I'm like, well, I've been putting my schedule on your calendar for so long that your calendar, you see my stuff on there. So it just, we couldn't work the schedules out. So it was like, it was very friendly. I just saw them this weekend. We all hung out, and they're still my pals, and they're still killer. And their new drummer, Chris Dovas, is doing a great job. I mean, I know they had some challenging times after I left, but now their new drummer Chris, he's crushing it, and they sound like the Testament you expect them to sound like. So that's pretty good.
Now, this was a time when the world opened back after the lockdown.
That's right.
Were you disappointed that they did not make new music during the lockdown?
Who, Testament?
Mm-hmm.
That I mean, there's a million things they could have done, and it always takes Testament a little while to get it together. I would imagine that that Eric Peterson and Alex Skolnick, I would imagine that they got together and started writing the next album. But their album Titans of Creation just came out. I mean, it came out after the lockdown happened. It came out like the lockdown happened in late March, and it came out in late March kind of thing. So they had a brand new record on their hands, and since the future was so nebulous, they probably didn't really know what was going to happen. So it's like, okay, well, once the lockdown is over, do we go out and tour this record, or do we just kind of cut it and move on to the next one? So whatever Testament wants to do, I'm sure Testament's fans are going to be very happy with it. Absolutely.
Do you feel like Testament is not a level where they deserve to be? And what I mean by that, they are one of the top thrash bands, and everyone knows their name, but they never got to that top tier of the big four.
I guess that happened at a time when I was not involved with them, so I can't really comment on that. But when it comes to the big four, or if they tried to stretch it out to the big five, I mean, I would imagine Testament would be a candidate for that fifth spot, as well could be Exodus or Overkill, or maybe even Creator or Death Angel, or one of those kind of bands. There's like, but the big four, I remember that term was coined for kind of not necessarily the first four, but the bands that came along and just got big. This sold a lot of records, got a lot of popularity pretty quickly. Those bands, of course, being Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, and Anthrax. And that's great for those bands. Those guys are the godfathers of what we do. Absolutely. So
now, this was the second longest time you were with a band, right?
Maybe. I mean, it could have been the longest, actually, just because I came back and started working with Testament in 2011, and then it was 2020 or maybe 2020, 2023. There was 2 years of nothing, so I don't know if you count those or not, but yeah, it was 2023 when I stepped aside. So I suppose that's 12 years, but there was 2.5 years of stasis, 2 years of stasis. So in terms of numbers, I suppose that would be the longest, I would think.
What is it like being in a band with your wife?
That's amazing for me, because like, I had nothing to do with her joining any of my projects, because she's got her own respect, her own, it's not me going to my, like, Dark Angel, for instance, going, hey guys, can I have my wife? No, she was chosen by our departed guitarist, Jim Durkin. He's like, I want her to be my replacement, when I can't make shows. And the band went had nothing to do with me. They took on their own vote, the rest of the guys, and they were the ones that voted her because she's amazing. She's an amazing guitarist. She's an amazing human. She uplifts everybody around her. So that's a real good thing. And now the fact that she's involved in Bear McCreary, and that's my latest project, and that's over the top amazing. She's one of the guitarists for Bear's band, and she plays a lot on Bear's new album, The Singularity, which is an amazing album. I strongly suggest everybody check out The Singularity. That is killer music. And for those who are familiar with Bear McCreary, you're aware that he's very well known for doing the music for the Walking Dead TV show and Amazon's Lord of the Rings of Power. And he does a lot of movies. We worked on the Godzilla King of the Monsters soundtrack together a few years ago, and just the stars that Bear has together. It's an all-star band. Lara Christine plays a lot of guitar on, but it's got guys like Serge Tankian and Corey Taylor and Jens from Meshuggah, Rufus Wainwright, Joe Satriani, Slash, Guthrie Govan on guitar, just Kim Thile, just Scotty, bunch of legends are on his record, and everybody stepped up with their parts on The Singularity. But I strongly suggest anybody to check that album out, because that's super killer stuff, totally. And so yeah, it's great playing with my wife, because then that's always it's always just fun having her around. She's my best pal, so I have a great time when she's around. We have a good time together, so why not?
And I heard a new album might be coming out this year. Is that right?
For Dark Angel?
Yes.
Well, I am unfortunately not at liberty to say with what is actually happening with Dark Angel, but I know that at some time very, very soon, when I have some solid schedule, some solid dates to be able to announce some really fun news for the Dark Angel fans, we're going to be able to announce some stuff. And so that's going to be super awesome. I've been working diligently for the last couple of years on some projects that are going to make Dark Angel fans really happy, I think. So, everybody just sit tight. Very soon we'll be able to, I just don't want to nebulously announce something and then have circumstances beyond my control come along and make things delayed. I just want to be able to say, yes, this is going to be a solid date that we can announce for people, and we're going to be able to stick to that date. That's what I'm all about. So, keep your eyes and ears peeled, everybody. I tell you.
What is it like making new music 30 years later, 30 years after the last album?
Well, that's one thing. It's like we had a choice. Like I had an entire Dark Angel album written that was ready to start getting recorded after the Time Does Not Heal record, and circumstances occurred where the band just had to dissolve. So I had a bunch of material written, and when Jim Durkin and myself, Jim is no longer with us, but when we put Dark Angel back together, and we started talking about, like, what do we want to do for the future? Do we want to write some new material? And I've got some ideas, Gene, and you probably have some ideas, and I have a number of songs that I sent to Jim. And when Jim heard that I sent it to him on a CD. He freaked out. He was like, "My God, here's our new album. This is going to be our next record. Hell yeah!" And he got really excited about that material. But I was like, "Hey, Jim, tell you what, I feel really strongly about my writing chops, and the songs I'm hearing from you right now are crushing. So how about we just write new stuff for get together and start writing new material?" And so we kind of went that route. And so for my elements of what I wanted Dark Angel to sound like, Jim Durkin is a huge influence on my writing style, so I wanted this to have a lot of Jim Durkin influence on it. In terms of riffs, there's not as many from Jim as we were hoping for, but the riffs that Jim's just entire presence is all over the new Dark Angel material that I've been working on. And you know, he's a huge guitar influence on me, as well as a lot of people. So there's definitely going to be a pretty hearty Jim Durkin influence. And I just want to write a kick-ass metal album. So what I've tried to do is not go back 35 years or 37 years or whatever the first, you know, Darkness Descends or even We Have Arrived, those early albums, or Leave Scars or Time Does Not Heal. I've not tried to duplicate anything from any of those albums, but I tried to put myself in the mindset of what if Dark Angel just kept writing albums for the last 30 whatever years, 32, 33 years, where would we be at now? And so that has been my approach on the new Dark Angel material.
Why do you think you're the go-to guy in the metal scene when someone needs a drummer?
Well, I suppose you'd probably have to ask other folks about that. You know, I just try to be me. And you know, it's like one thing I do feel like I try to give people is the total package, where okay, the skills are whatever, you know, like okay, you got skills, but I also try to, you know, bring a real fun attitude and try to bring a real professionalism. You know, I'm not a flake. I'm pretty darn stable. So if you're relying on somebody that you need to rely on, I'm your guy there. You know, I'm a pretty reliable dude. So you know, that's where I've over the course of my career, I've definitely been influenced by a whole lot of drummers, and I wear those influences on my sleeve. And by the same token, I also try to put back into the pot of influence. Like, you know, I've tried to take drums into whatever approach works for me. And if that approach can work for others, you know, I'm like, if it works for me, it might work for you. Two rides, you know, whatever it is, you know, beats that have never been heard before, creating beats out of my brain, give that to the world, you know, because I've taken beats from other guys that they created. And so I try to do the same thing. You know, you look at some of the death material and, you know, some of the Bear McCreary material, some of the Death Clock material, and just whatever I've tried. Dark Angel definitely tried to come up with beats that nobody else had heard at the time. So that's pretty cool. That's, you just, if you're gonna steal from people, you better give back. That's always been my thing. So maybe that's what folks see. And I've always tried to be a chameleon in terms of like, maybe you might know, oh, that's definitely Gene Hoglan on drums, but I want the band to sound like the band. I don't want it to sound like the band with Gene Hoglan on drums. I want to serve the band's song. If I'm doing a Testament album or something, that is not going to be the same approach as, you know, like Strapping Young Lad. And a Strapping Young Lad album did not sound like Dark Angel, and Death did not sound like Strapping Young Lad, and just all of that. You try to create a number of characters and characteristics and identities for each band, and I think I'm pretty decent at that. So that's kind of what I wanted to do with my career. And when I'm helping out other bands, you know, and there are times when I get the call from a band saying, hey, we just lost our drummer today, like, can you be on a plane tomorrow with these songs learned? And I'm like, sure, you know, or you know, or like, hey, we just lost our drummer today and we're going out on that stage in 4 hours, 5 hours. Think you can learn some of our songs? Okay, let's try it, you know. So that sort of situation has happened on a number of occasions, and I always just try to step up to it. I have a pretty good I won't say it's a photographic memory by any means, but I have a good memory for learning parts, and I'm a pretty good mimic. I try to play, if I'm playing in a band of with other, you know, there's another drummer involved, I'm playing another drummer's material. If I have a lot of respect for that material, I will definitely try to pay as much attention to their, you know, give as much attention to their performances as I can, and try to emulate that as much as possible. And there are some times when the leaders involved say, hey man, don't pay attention to the drums on our whatever album that was, just do your thing and I'm sure it's going to be pretty good. So I'm always open to all approaches. So there you go.
Why do you think guys like you and David, well, Dave Lombardo, never found a real home in the music world? And what I mean, and I mean that by yes, you guys have been bands for a long time, but you've never been in one solid project. You were never there from start to finish.
Well, I suppose that could be just, when I love surrounding myself with amazing musicians, and I always knew growing up that I was going to play with a vast array of musicians. And when I was a real young kid, and I was starting to develop a little bit of proficiency on my instrument, you know I was I always felt like, dude, you want to make your sky's the limit, Gene. So open yourself up to playing with everybody, open yourself up to playing whatever style comes along. I love metal. I love playing violent, vicious thrash metal, but I also love showing the world that I can play a whole ton of stuff. Like for instance, not to come back to the Bear McCreary album. That album on the drums runs the gamut from blast beats and savage drumming to really beautiful, sublime songs that need drums that just sit way back. And so that's one thing I've always wanted to be known for, is being just a really well-rounded drummer rather than being the fastest or having the fastest double bass or the fastest hands. That's never been super important to me, but being a well-rounded drummer that can play convincingly, like tons of styles, like you got the hardcore metal stuff down, definitely, and then you could play a ballad and serve that song really well. That's really important to me. And so that could be why I played with so many folks, because a lot of people are like, hey, I want the guy, I love this. I know that's one of the reasons why I have gotten hired so many times, because people have heard that album and they've said, I want that drum, I want that drummer, or I want the drums to sound like that. So why not reach out to the drummer that played on that record? So I've gotten that a number of times, and there's been times when they're like, I love that feel that you had with this album or these songs, and I'm like, okay, well, that gives me an idea of what you're looking for. Let's go for it.
Do you consider yourself a hired gun?
In a lot of ways, sure, absolutely. I mean, I'm a session player as well. I do not need to be a member of a band. I'm my brand, myself. I've always tried to make myself irreplaceable as a hired gun. Like, once you hire me, I will spoil you to death, and then your next guy that you get after me, you're gonna be like, damn, we had a really good with Hogan. I always try to do that. I always try to leave that kind of impression behind. Like, damn, we had the best, and for whatever reason, we don't have the best anymore. He's off doing his thing. That's the way I've always been. I'm very confident in my skills. So, I know what I am and what I've done for the metal scene and for the drumming community, and that gets explained to me quite a bit from people. Especially like walking around a festival like this weekend, I get to hear what people have to say about my pushing 40-year career, and a lot of folks have a lot of nice things to say about it. So that's one thing I've always tried to leave a good scar behind, with whatever project I'm in. And if I'm a hired gun, sure, I'm absolutely a hired gun. There's no shame in that. I mean, there's truth. You're a hired gun. You get hired for this thing. I'm a hired assassin, a hired sniper, definitely.
Well, what would you consider success in the music industry?
When you are happy with what you are doing, like my entire life mantra is be happy. That's it. If you're stoked with what you're doing and you're excited about the music you're making, and maybe you don't have the biggest following, but you love your music, that is absolute 100% success. And that's the way it's been for me with a lot of my bands. Like back when Dark Angel, not the biggest band in the world. Death at the time, not the biggest band in the world. Strapping Young Lad, not the biggest. Um, but I was really happy playing all this material. A strapping young lad, holy moly, that is an untouchable metal band. And there wasn't a lot of, accolades or success or financial gain at that point. But I was really happy with what I was doing, so that's all that mattered to me. As long as you're stoked with what you're doing, that is 100% absolute success. Totally. If you
So,
have integrity, if that comes with integrity, totally, try to be really true to yourself. You gotta make those decisions that make your heart feel good. You are a successful person. If you're making your heart feel good about things, it doesn't matter about your pocketbook or material, owning the latest car or, whatever, if you're making your heart happy, then you are a success. Absolutely.
tell me how you would explain your sound, as you are one of the most unique drummers out here, or out there.
Well, that is one thing that I think one portion of like my, I guess, sound is um, the the chameleon-like nature that I bring to each project. It's like I don't want my projects to sound like directly like so similar that it's like, oh, you could just interchange this band drumming with that band drumming. Um, so I've always just my sort of sound and approach is I've always tried to level myself up with every project I do. I never try to just rest on my laurels or hit some form of stasis. I'm always trying to improve myself. And, that's one thing I can work in a really quick manner. There's many, many albums where it's like I've gotten zero time to prepare for them. The songs are being written in the studio, so a lot of times you got to make this batch of songs sound like you have spent months and months and months, working on the parts and giving a lot of love to each song and each part. But you really have 2 hours to get all that done. That's happened many times. So that is one thing I think I've had to develop a dexterity at, is trying to make a song sound very, very lived in a very limited amount of time. So I'm pretty good at that. And part of my sound, whole lot of double bass, and I always try to get a really big drum sound. And I'm not involved in a lot of the mixes. Sometimes they'll send out some mixes and say, what do you think of Gene? What do you think of these, Gene? Do you have any suggestions or anything? And there are other times when it's like, we'd like you to be involved in the mix. We're going to send you all the rough mixes and you help us tweak them. And those are always fun to be a part of. But I can work in either fashion. You guys take care of it all and just try to make the drums sound good. When it comes to an actual sound, the thing that I am more interested in is having drum clarity over drum hugeness. These days, if I'm doing some intricate parts or some parts where it's like the ear might not be able to catch exactly what's going on, I would like there to be a focus on the clarity of what's happening. So, if there's parts where it's like the toms need to, these individual tom things, or the little accents I'm doing on the splashes or kangs or chinas or anything, I like for those to come out. So that's the thing I'm more interested in these days than having the most gargantuan drum sound ever. Even though with, like, say, that Bear McCreary album, The Singularity, that has a gigantic drum sound to it. I'm all about that too. And there's a lot of clarity to everything. But then I was involved in a lot of those mixes where I'd be like, hey, check this, try some of this, and don't forget about this. And hey, there's a couple of things right here we need to bring up, that kind of thing. And I always like being a part of mixes, totally.
Did Slayer ask to see if you would roadie for them again on the reunion?
Um, well, actually, in a way, I sort of did on that goodbye tour. Um, it it just kind of, I was playing with Testament, and a lot of the shows I was also playing for Anthrax. I was substituting for Charlie Benante, and we would go out to the front of house, and the front of house is where the sound man is at. And that's always the best sounding place. That's the best place to see a show, is the FOH, front of house. And so myself, some of the guys from Testament, Willie Adler from Lamb of God, and a few of the other guys from the bands, every night we'd go out and see Slayer. And they were playing a lot of big old amphitheaters, with the lawn sections in the back, way in the back. And one thing that we were all noticing, I mean, Slayer's shows were so good. Their just presentation was so amazing, with all the pyro and all the everything just going on. It was just a murderous night of metal coming from Slayer. And on the big screens on the side of the stage, when they got the big screens, there were so many times when the big screens were just not good, and Slayer did not have their own like video package or anything. They didn't have their own guy. They would have the local guy who, sometimes they're like 65, 70 years old, or they're country music fans. They don't grasp the concept of metal. Like, you got to put a camera on the guy playing lead guitar, or here comes a big old drum part right here. There were so many times, and it was well known that while there's Gary Holt peeling off some killer lead, the camera is focused on Tom staring at Paul, kind of thing. And the band was noticing it, and their people were noticing it. And I was noticing that all those folks in the back, in the lawn areas, they're so far from the stage. The band are ants. So I'm like, man, the folks back there really rely on the screens. So it they were getting shortchanged. And so I was getting angry about that, for the fans. This is the last time they're going to get to see Slayer, and they're getting ripped off, So I went to the band and I just said, hey, guys, your screens, you're aware, right? And they're like, yes, we know there could be improvement. And I was like, tell you what, I've never done this before, but I'm absolutely happy to offer myself to be your director for the screens, like and they were like, God, would you? Geez, that'd be killer. Thank you. And so it took me a couple of shows to, I'd watch the guy that, and I remember having a pencil or a pen or something. I'd just point at the, because you're looking at this big monitor in their production room. You're looking at a big giant monitor, and on that monitor are little, kind of like what we're looking at here, like with the little, you got the little screen down here, like you're big for me. I'm the little guy right down there. And you got a number of those, you got like 4, 5, 6 going across. And so I would just be taking the pencil and point at this screen, point at that screen, point at that screen over there. When it's time for, here comes Kerry King's guitar solo, point at that screen. And I just kept watching the guy, seeing what he's doing, the way he's communicating with his team of cameramen. And about 2 or 3 shows in, I was the one that started putting on the headphones and calling out, camera 1, get your vocalist, camera 2, get your bald guy, camera 3, get the other guitar guy, that kind of thing, And so I started roadieing for Slayer again, and that was killer. I was like, I would play with Testament, play with Anthrax, and then go to the production room and do the big screens for them. And I was in charge of all the cameras, and I learned how to do like really cool dissolves and things like that. So just made it a really interesting night. And the band was like, thank you. That was the one thing we were lacking. And so I'd make sure to capture all the pyro for all the folks way in the back so they could see it on the big screens. And that was really fun. So, and, I've been approached again for these upcoming shows, see if I could do that again. And I'm just trying to see what might be in my schedule. See if I can pull that off, because my schedule is pretty crazy until 2026, kind of, deep into 2025. So we're seeing if I can squeeze a couple of these things in. We'll see.
What was like for you on the road?
Well, it's the only life I've ever known. My last like kind of day job was in the 80s, and I was like, like a teenager kind of then. But I've been on the road since I was 16. Slayer being the first band I was on the road with on their very first US, traveling dates, piles of tour. Um, and I just, I joined Dark Angel pretty quickly after that, and we were going out playing a ton of shows, out of town shows all over the place. So, I started touring when I was 16, and I haven't really stopped. That was 40 years ago. So, um, this is all I've known. Life on the road is the only one I've ever known. So I can't really compare it with somebody else. I'm in a very, very fortunate position. I do count my blessings for being able to do this kind of life. Because when I was, around your age, I was like this. I want to be a rock and roll drummer. I want to be a heavy metal drummer. I want to be a drummer that tours the world, sees the world. I just want to pay my bills through playing music. And by the time I was 13, like I was 11 when I pretty much put that thought into my brain. And by the time I was 13, I was like, I'm locked in. This is exactly what I want to be doing. So I am an I am the absolute poster child for living one's dream, and I'm very fortunate for it. Anytime the schedule ever gets crazy, like I've been on the road since February with 4 different projects, and anytime the schedule gets really crazy, I just have to tell myself, hey, dude, you asked for this. When you were a kid, you wanted this, you asked for this, you got this. So I never complain. I do the opposite, man. I say thank you to the powers that be that allow me to have a life like this. Heck yes, absolutely.
What's the best venue you've ever played?
Let me see. Gosh, oh boy, we played a lot of big old stadiums. God, I remember I played Olympic stadiums over in Munich. Like the stadiums themselves where the Olympics occurred, and where in Russia, gigantic arenas where the Olympics occurred there. Those are always amazing. And my favorite venue to play is always the next one. The next one where it's going to be like the crowd's into it. I don't care if we're playing in front of 250,000 people or 800. Like it's all awesome. 800 folks, 1,000 folks, they're all sweaty and screaming and yelling, and it's awesome. And then, I mean, playing those big giant places, I'll admit, there's a little bit of a disconnect. Like when you're playing a big old festival or something over in Europe, they're like you can't really get that one-on-one with the crowd. But that's you're playing in front of a whole lot of folks, and that's always fun too. Seeing a sea of humanity, a sea of heads out there all headbanging. I'm all about rocking every one of those heads. So there's been so many venues, but I always look forward to the next one. Absolutely.
What's the worst?
Well, there was a place in Phoenix called the Mason Jar that was pretty, it was adorable. It was a tiny little hole in the wall. There was a place I remember when in Death, and this would have been 1993, I believe, and it was in Bilbao, Spain, and we pulled up to this venue and we're like, there's no way we have the address wrong. And this was before GPS, and this is when you had to pull out the map to find your bus driver knew where he was going. And even the bus driver was like, this cannot be the venue. We have to have some kind of, there's got to be a communication breakdown here somewhere. It was this old, burnt out church. And we were able to get inside it and take a look around. And we're like, God, this place it looks like it just looked devastated on the inside. And the promoter shows up, and we're like, do we have this wrong? Like, this can't be. Chuck and our tour manager at the time were on the phone with the booking agent going, I don't think this is the place. And an hour or so later, the promoter shows up, and he's like, oh yeah, this is the place. And we're looking. He's like, there's your backstage area, and there were, it was like just planks of wood with big giant gaps. I mean, you could see the ceiling above the planks of wood. The gaps were so wide. They're like, wait, that's where we're gonna like hang out. And where's the restroom? It's like, oh, that outhouse over there. That's the toilet for the whole place. And just like, whoa, this is nuts. And we were like, you know what? We can't play here. You know, the safety hazard for one, you know, because we're going to put 1,000 people in here. Like, if something goes wrong, there's only one entrance and exit. There's no back exit. You know, like this is a fire hazard. This is definite danger. So we can't play here. And he's like, oh, you're going to play here. You know, like, and then we're like, no, we're not. He's like, well, tell you what, I got my guys coming down here, and each one of them has I'm going to train a high-powered rifle on each one of you musicians, and force you to play this show. And we're like, okay, noted. Tell you what, we'll play the show under those circuits. If you're going to put a gun to our heads, we'll play this show.
We'll play it for free.
Just give us a minute. We're going to head over to the hotel, and we're going to check into the hotel, and then we're going to come back and set up the gear. There was no hotel, you know, and we got on the bus, and we're like, all right, boys, we're hightailing it for the border. We're getting right out of here, you know, because he let us go. You know, he's like, okay, we'll go to the hotel and check in and come back. And then he started realizing as we're getting in the bus and we're driving out, I think it was one of those things where we were supposed to make a left turn if we're going to that hotel, but we just kept going straight because the highway was in front of us. You could see him in the back. You know, we can see him out of the side mirrors of the bus. Him and his two cronies are jumping in the car, chasing after us, and they chased us to the border. And because Bilbao is very, very north, and the border was not far. It was only a 10-minute drive to the border. And we just drove straight through the border and you know, just got out of that show. That venue would have been the worst venue I ever played. So the fact that we were being forced to play it with guns to our heads, that was no bueno.
You sang or you died.
Right. Yeah. We did not croak that day, so it was a good day.
What is your favorite memory from playing the show?
Well, one thing I've always tried to be a part of is the thing I love about the bands that I've been in is I feel that there are a majority of my bands that I've played in, like from Strapping Young Lad to Death Clock to you know, like even Death, where we're changing somebody's life that night. You know, especially with Strapping, especially with Death Clock, because Death Clock was such a gateway band to metal for so many people that, you know, so many people have come up to us over the past 20 years going, you were the first heavy metal band I ever heard, you know, because of the TV show. You know, I didn't know anything about heavy metal, but I used to watch your show and I was like, I love this music. And then when you guys come out on tour, I'd go, you know, my parents would take me to the shows, or I'd make my way over to the shows. And, you know, Death Clock was a gateway band. Strapping was definitely a gateway to some extreme metal for a lot of folks. So I've always loved being a part of a band that is changing somebody's life that night. And I've seen it occur a million times. Absolutely. So those are some of my best memories, is knowing that we have taken somebody off whatever this path is and we put them on this path. And so many folks have told me that, you know, my first album was, you know, the album that taught me how to play guitar was Death Symbolic, or, you know, I saw Strapping back in the day, and Devin Townsend was such a crazy guy, and you're such a crazy guy on drums. I went and bought a drum set the next day, that kind of thing, you know. So I'm pretty fortunate in that regard that it's one thing to entertain people, but for me, it's kind of a mandatory next level thing to change their lives. That's what I'm about. Entertaining, shit, anybody can do that. Taking somebody off their trajectory and putting them on one that's awesome that they're going to have so much fun with, heck yeah, I'm all about that.
What is your worst?
What's that? My worst memory? Yeah, I am the kind of person that I tend to block out the bad, and that could be a mental deficiency. I don't know, but you know, I can come up with a million awesome things that have happened, but then when I've got to go digging down deep into the brain matter of, you know, what was the worst this, or what was terrible, or whatever, you know, I mean, I can usually find some kind of positive in anything. Like even when I was in Strapping Young Lad up in Canada, and I had lost the place that I was staying at. The people that were, I was couch surfing with, they were like, "Hey, we're moving, so we gotta kick you out on the street." And I didn't know anybody up there. I slept in my truck for a month. And even then, I wasn't like, "Oh, this is terrible. This is the worst thing ever." I was like, this character building moments. I'm just like, this isn't gonna make me tuck my tail between my legs and go back to Los Angeles feeling like a failure. No, I'm going to ride this out. Things are going to be cool because I'm playing the most kick-ass music I can think of right now. So, playing with strapping. So that was all pretty cool. I can always find the positives in things. And, so if there was some kind of crappy experience, I'm sure I found some kind of way to grow from that, that kind of thing. So there you go.
What is next for you?
What's that, brother?
What's next for you?
Next, let me see. Um, we're commencing on this Death to All run, the Scream of Perseverance tour, and then in July, as of right this moment, that is continuing work on one of my projects in order to see its release. So that's going to be the next thing. As for road work, shoot, man, I haven't even gone that far into the calendar, but I know there's going to be more stuff happening by the end of the year. So it's going to be, and then 2025 is going to be really super duper crazy. So but I know there's going to be more Bear McCreary stuff, and I know there's some more Death Clock on the horizon that we're getting that is being talked about. So you'll see some more Death Clock stuff. You'll see a little more Bear McCreary as well by the end of 2024, and I would no doubt imagine that there will be some more Dark Angel gigs this year, and then next year we'll be pretty darn busy for Dark Angel, and I quite possibly Death Clock as well. So there you go. But I will never fade away. I will always be out in the forefront of doing stuff. So this is all I do, and I intend to be doing this for another few decades. So you can't get rid of me that easy.
What is on your writer?
Writer. Well, we tend to, I mean, back in the day, we used to be rock and rolla. Now we're raw granola. We're getting a little more advanced in our experienced in our years. So, a lot of the fun items have been replaced by more sensible items. Like it's drifted more to the organic side. Like we ask for sprouted, like sprouted grain bread as opposed to Wonder white bread kind of thing. And for our catering, we have, we're surrounded by vegans these days as well. My drum tech Jeff, he's a vegan, so we always try to make sure we got a lot of vegan friendly options. And when you're out on tour and you're getting catering, like where they're cooking you meals every night in the kitchen, there's always a lot of vegan options and always a lot of healthier options. You try not to, you are stuck at the end of the night with the odd, here's a bunch of pizzas or here's some cheeseburgers or something like that. And so when I'm on the road, I tend to eat rather shabbily. But when I'm at home, my wife Laura and I are always eating really well. We have, we'll eat 6 salads in a week, kind of thing, for dinner. And we've even had salads for breakfast, and that's pretty insane. That's actually, you'd be surprised at what a salad for breakfast. It sounds gross. When we got given that concept, that we were like, blah, blah, that sounds horrible. And we love salads, but that doesn't sound good. Let me tell you, we started trying it. Yeah, man, talk about putting energy into your day. That's amazing. But our writer has things like, like just healthier options and a lot of like, instead of cookies for snacks and bakery items for snacks, we'll be getting the raw nuts kind of thing, the raw almonds or the raw cashews or the raw this and that and the other. And I I eat a lot of superfood on the road. I ingest a lot of that, which is just pretty much straight nutrition. It's just straight, essentially ground up vegetables, and in a powder form. Add that to my drink. I used to do Red Bulls, drink a Red Bull. I've tried to shy away from that. Red Bull is just an absolute emergency situation for me if I don't have access to any kind of superfood. But a few scoops of superfood into some water right before you go on stage, a half hour before. I get a nap on stage. Those two combinations, on stage. Yeah, I take a nap on stage. I take a nap before we hit the stage, and that's been my regimen for years and years and years. So get the nap, try the superfood, and you're ready to go. You're ready to just, you're ready to change lives every night. I tell you.
How do my followers follow you?
Well, all of my socials, I would just suggest Google my name, and I've got all the socials that are out there. I've got the Instagram and the Twitter and the Facebooks and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes it's under the real Gene Hoglan or Gene Hoglan Official. I've got the YouTube channel as well. And so just if you Google me, you'll see all my socials, and just you know what to do from there. Absolutely.
Any cool merch?
What's that?
Any cool merch?
Got tons of merch, and that you can check out through the Reversed Records website. And there's tons of Gene merch, tons of Dark Angel merch, tons of Death to All merch as well. And there's a lot of, like I say, there's a lot of my merch on there. A lot of t-shirts and patches and cool stuff. And my DVDs are all available and things like that. So definitely scope out there. Just Google Gene Hoglan merch, and it'll probably run you over to the Reverse Records page. Totally, man. And see something cool, pick it up. Totally.
You gotta hook up your boy with some fresh gear, man. Come on now.
Hey, there you go, man. I'll talk to my folks, and I know your folks are in touch with Willow, my folks, and I'll have my manager send you some stuff. Absolutely.
Thank you. One question time, you're on death row and it's time for your final meal. What is on the menu?
Well, that is where I would probably go nuts. I tell you, I would probably have to order one of those 72-ounce steaks and try to eat it so fast and so incredibly that I just burst. So you don't get to kill me, I kill myself, kind of thing. So there you go.
If you could have any superpower, what would you choose?
If I could have any
superpower.
The one that I already have, and that would be ultimate compassion for somebody else's plight. That's one thing I've tried to do. I've tried to have an understanding of other humans, and so if that could be a superpower, I would like to advance that in myself, to have even more compassion for other folks, to where I would like to be a philanthropist. So the superpower of philanthropy, I'm down with that, totally.
Let's say you can choose any song ever by any band, and you can change that song to where you're the one who wrote it. It was your song. What song would it be in?
Living for the City by Stevie Wonder. It's an all-time classic. It's a great one. That's just the first one that pops into my head. And I'm such a Stevie Wonder fan that that's an all-time great. So yeah, if it could be like, hey, Gene, you wrote this great song, I'm like, I can live with that. Don't you?
Well, thank you for being on my show. It's been my pleasure. I hope the next time we speak is at the backstage, is at one of your shows. Thank you again, man.
Jim, thank you very much. I sure appreciate it. And I hope to see you on the road sometime. If you're ever anywhere near I'm playing, just reach out to my folks, and we'll get you and your family in, and we'll have a good time.
Exactly, man. Come to Buffalo and I'll be there.
Excellent. We will. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it, brother.